kind of coincidental. I happened to see Lauren, an optometrist, here a couple of weeks ago.
Did you ask him if he wanted to come back on the
Oh,
board?
Lord, yeah, he thought I'd retired already.
Oh.
He said, how you enjoying your retirement? I said, well, I'm still there. He said, oh, wow. I named it. Yeah,
I love that.
but yeah, he looked good. He just got back.
2 minutes.
You're kind of pulling an old Tom.
I know, that's what I was just getting ready to say.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, I thought about Zoom again because I was cutting beef.
Well, that's why I figured you probably were.
Well, it's getting close to dark.
No, I did. I figured both of you and John probably cut me.
John needs a light on his face. Can't see him.
So,
By the way, you're sitting in new chairs.
Oh, really?
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 you suppose if I raise this up to fit me, that the guy coming next.
You raised your chair up.
Just that, who's sitting in there?
I noticed that chair was really low and you're awfully tall.
Is that better for you guys to see the screen?
I wouldn't know how.
Is it because you guys are
Part right here.
just trying to?
Wow.
There you go.
He's looking there, he's like, "Who's sitting in my chair?"
No.
There was one of these chairs that was really tall. I think it usually sat here, but
See, you got it. No, you got it.
no, Joe got moved over. He's the one that takes the cubby hole.
Yeah, that's where I used to have them. Well, I see it's 7:30. I'd like to call the joint meeting of the Raleigh County Planning Board and the Board of Zoning Appeals to order this evening. First item on our agenda this evening is an open public comments section. Anyone in the public that would like to make comments regarding planning and development in Raleigh County, it's an opportunity to, doesn't have to be related to the agenda or anything, just any general comments. Yes. Yeah, can you say your name and, yeah.
Here I am, then I put my mask back on.
That's
My name's
all right.
Dee Brokish. I live at 3005 Wilson Drive in Manhattan. And I'd like to comment on the draft land development regulations. And I
Okay.
actually have a copy that I made for each one of you, my comments, so may I hand
Okay.
them out to
Yeah.
you all?
Sure.
Okay. So I can, the third paragraph, I'm not gonna read that, but I'll read the other ones.
Okay.
If you have time for it. I didn't know if there's a time limit.
Yeah.
Did you write your name and address on that? Thank you.
Just be better suited to when we review that. Board is, yeah, go ahead.
All right, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, again, my name is Dee Brokish, I live in Manhattan. And I'd like to comment on the draft land development regulations. My background includes 36 years as a licensed landscape architect in the state of Kansas. For 31 years, I worked as a landscape architect at Kansas State University, with most of that time at K-State Facilities Plan. My work included campus specification standards development, design and construction contract management, and code review of architectural engineering and landscape architectural design and construction documents. Among other topics, landscape architects study stormwater management, sanitary sewage systems, topographic grades, pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular routes, and erosion control. What sets landscape architecture apart from other design professions is the understanding of human behavior in outdoor settings and the study of natural systems that affect, among others, crop production. For example, knowing how humans behave in outdoor spaces can result in infrastructure cost savings. I'll go down to the part where I've underlined it with regard to the land development regulations. So I reviewed part of the regulations. There's 386 pages. I got through part of that, so not everything. But I hear some comments for the portions that I was able to review and had time for. So in Article 4, Section 13, about the manufactured home park district, that states a drainage study prepared by an engineer licensed in the state of Kansas. So what I'm suggesting is to consider adding landscape architects as a design professional who could submit that drainage study. And in that paragraph above, I've described what the state of Kansas says landscape architects are allowed to do. Then on the next paragraph on Article 4, Section 22, it says that shrubs that should be 5 gallon in size. And I'm suggesting that some shrubs are not available in as large as a 5 gallon size, especially for shrubs that stay short. So I'm suggesting a 2 gallon size, which according to the ANSI standards, it would be considered a number 2 container. And that would be for the smallest size of plants that reach 30 inches in height or less. And then on Article 4, talking about the Gateway Corridor Overlay District, it is not defined how many building stories are allowed. So I would suggest defining the number of stories. If it was listed somewhere else later in the document, I just didn't see it. So it could be located somewhere else, but I didn't find that, at least in that article. Then Article 4, Section D, I'd like to have you consider adding language about bicycle travel with regard to shared use roadways, bike lanes, and or shared pedestrian and bicycle paths. Basically, to talk a little bit more about some other options for bike lanes and bike travel. And then Article 4, same as the paragraph above about bike planning. What was listed just wasn't very detailed about what you might consider for some new innovative ways to encourage bicycle traffic. Then in Article 5, under the use specific standards, paragraph G, it talks about an extraction operation should not be permitted within 300 feet of a residence or 200 feet of a residential district. So if I was understanding that a 10 feet or 15-foot setback is required for the buildings, for residences, then the distance might only be 210 or 215 feet. And I think in your one of your last meetings, you talked about different setbacks to be matching. So I suggest making both numbers 300, but there could be some other paragraph in there that talks about what the setback is for a residential district, and I just wasn't catching that. But it just seems like that 200 foot might end up being what would be interpreted as the minimum. So I suggest looking into that. And then on Article 6, Section 6, talking about streets, driveways, and pedestrian circulation and the visibility at the intersections. I was not able to find that Riley County standards for roadway design in platted subdivisions, that title. I found something that seemed similar to that. So just having the titles match on the different documents would make it easier to find out what the regulations are. And then I also wanted to say that I suggest, I recommend using the ASTO standards for setting site triangles to meet or exceed the stopping distances found in Table 3 at the following websites. And I've also made a copy of it on that second sheet of the site distances. And I wasn't looking cross-referencing with the city Manhattan standards, but in the past, there is a 15-foot site triangle at intersections, but that just does not meet stopping distances. So say like a car that's coming 25 miles an hour, the stopping distance is 155 feet. So when a car is behind the stop bar, and then the person who's driving looks down the street, well, having something within that site triangle that makes it so you can't see if a car is coming down the road. So, I suggest to include, that reference for this AASHTO guidelines into these standards, and that would, make it more safe. An example would be, at the new Douglas Center, that's at 10th and Fort Riley Boulevard. When a person's coming from the north and looking east, there's a traffic signal box that's maybe stands about this tall, this wide, or it's right in that side triangle. So I can't see if anybody's coming, and that's just an example. But that having a clear view of cars coming, it would just make it safer. And I know some of the guidelines talk about, like, well, look to see how many cars have an accident first. In my mind, we need to not have an accident in the first place. So that's the gist of that comment there. Then Article 6, Section 7, parking, loading, and access drive, paragraph C, off-street parking. So I was looking just briefly at the amount of parking for the type of facility. And for example, if a child care center has, for example, 250 children and maybe 32 staff, I didn't check the codes to see if KDHE how many staff would be required. But then the required number of off-street parking appeared to be 94 when there was that 1-to-3 ratio listed on the chart. So that seems like a lot of parking for 32 staff and then the parents coming and going. So I would suggest looking at that number and also numbers of some of the other parking requirements they like for the big box stores to see if that many stalls are really necessary. When urban areas have excessive impervious pavement, so parking that they don't use, well, that contributes to downstream flooding. So I consider like evaluating if that many parking stalls are really required for some of those facilities. I can see why, or where like the retail facilities, they would want to have parking available for them, but I think it would be a good idea to just check into that to see if all those stalls are needed. Then under the Article 6 of the landscaping, that would be Section 8, paragraph B3, C, and 4. The tree size of 1.5-inch caliber is what was noted in that paragraph. But then earlier in Article 4, Section 22, it says 2.5-inch caliber for deciduous trees. Well, I suggest to have that 2.5-inch caliber tree consistent throughout the document. And the reason for that is so there's less vandalism. When I worked at K-State, when we had the larger caliper trees, we had less likelihood of vandalism from somebody just coming and shutting them down. Like when I designed the landscape for the stadium, the basketball stadium, we had, I think there are 2.5-inch caliper trees. Ginkgos come from all over from Georgia, a whole truckload of them. And then don't you know, after they were planted, somebody, and well, this was before they were planted, somebody came with a hatchet and just chopped the trunk of the tree, and that was even a 2.5-inch caliper. So we found that the larger the tree that's planted, the less likely somebody's just gonna be ornery and tear it up. So I think that 2.5-inch size is good, but then on that other paragraph, it just is inconsistent saying 1.5-inch caliper. And then also, once again, to consider that number 2 container size for plants less than 30 inches in mature height. Another thing that was not addressed, from what I could find in the document, was having a site distance setback at the apex of the parking lot island. So like in a parking lot, you might have kind of an oval shape where the islands are, you park up against the island. And then when you back up, there's this curve at the end, and you want to see if anybody's coming. Well, when we were developing the standards at K-State, we would have a 10-foot setback from that curve of plants that were shorter. So when you're backing up, you can see if somebody's coming. So that's what I'm suggesting here, having no more than a 30-inch height from the surface of the parking lot, not from the top of the curb. But having a shorter height of planted in there, it's good to have the plant material in there, but have it shorter so people can see when they back out in the parking stall, just to make it safer. And that 10-foot distance that I'm explaining, that actually was a recommendation from our parking services director at the time when we were developing the specification standards for K-State. So thank you very much for your time and listening. And good work, and thanks for working on those regulations.
Oh, thank you for the nice comments, and we'll sure consider these when we get to that point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in the public, I would assume that we won't have any further public comments, so we'll move to our consent agenda this evening, which involves approval of our minutes from the meeting in August the 9th and also for the fees. Are there any questions concerning the consent agenda items this evening?
Is that the August
August the 9th, yeah.
or September 13th meeting?
And what do I
Do
got
I have the
here?
wrong?
Consent agenda, yeah, it should have been September, and then it say August the 9th. And then it say August
Last
9th.
month,
What are you
You
guys?
got the wrong one. Yours looks different than mine.
September 13th.
This was set in your orders, excuse me.
Okay, what do you
Miss.
have, Diane?
No,
No, I'm, this is the old, this is.
He's got the other one.
Yep, excuse me. I got too many papers. Yeah, too many papers. Yeah, excuse me, back up. We'll go back to the consent agenda to consider the minutes of September the 13th and consider the report of fees for the month of September of 2021. Does anybody have any questions regarding that?
nope.
Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented in our packet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes 5-0. Yeah, I was over here looking at the minutes from the last meeting. Excuse me. With our consent agenda being approved, I'd entertain a motion that we adjourn the joint meeting of the Raleigh County Planning Board and the Board of Zoning Appeals. And since we have no Board of Zoning Appeals agenda this evening, that we reconvene as the Raleigh County Planning Board.
I move we do so.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn the joint meeting of the Raleigh County Planning Board and the Raleigh County Board of Zoning Appeals and reconvene as the Raleigh County Planning Board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, it passes 5-0. We have two items this evening in our general agenda for the planning board. Our first is a public hearing at the request of the Venduskis for a residential use designator extraneous farmstead. Bob, would you lead us through the information?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Bob Isaac, Raleigh County Planning Planner. David and Jenna Venduska have made application with Raleigh County Planning and Development, requesting approval for a residential use designator for an extraneous farmstead for an unplatted tract of land and to plat that tract into a single lot. SMH consultants are representing the applicant. The subject site is in the northern part of the county, generally located approximately 1.25 miles west of Tuttle Creek Boulevard on the south side of Jerusalem Road. The subject site is approximately an 11.7 acre portion of a larger 155 acre parent tract. The applicant is requesting to receive a residential use designator for an extraneous farmstead for that portion of the parent tract occupied by the existing single family residence built circa 1901 with several outbuildings. The subject site, along with the rest of the parent tract, is zoned AG Agricultural District shown here in gray. All surrounding property is also zoned AG Agricultural District as well. There are no special uses, variances, or conditional uses associated with the site. Riley County Fire District Number 1 will serve the site or continue to serve the site. The nearest county fire station is the Peach Grove Fire Station located at 2383 Peach Grove Road. However, due to a straight versus curvy segments of Swede Creek Road, the Swede Creek Fire Station located at 8360 Swede Creek Road may be the fastest responder. The subject property borders an unnumbered A zone, which is essentially a 1% annual chance floodplain with no base flood elevations established. The property is situated outside of the regulatory floodplain. Specific criteria for approving a residential use designated for extraneous farmstead are listed in section A of the Riley County zoning regulations. There are 5 standards that must be met for approval. And going through those, the board is familiar with those. And in summary, staff has determined the request to be consistent with these criteria. This is the preliminary plat showing the lot, existing home and outbuildings. This plat map also shows the slope of the subject site. The subject site is currently served by an on-site water well and wastewater lagoon. The subject site has direct access to Jerusalem Road, a 2-lane local road maintained by the township. No additional points of ingress, egress are being proposed with this request. And this is the final plat establishing a lot of 11.7 net acres. Just a few pictures of the site. This is actually standing on Jerusalem Road on the north property line, looking across the pasture property at the barn. Just kind of turning to my right a bit, you can see where the barn is and where the entrance is to the pasture. Incidentally, the barn and the outbuildings and the house itself is built on a ledge. It's and you can kind of see that from the preliminary plat and the contours, but you can clearly see it when you're going down the driveway. So, the driveway actually consists of part of that ledge, which is pretty incredible. This is the existing home toward the center of the proposed lot. As mentioned, the home was built around 1901. You can see the several outbuildings and stuff, and several mature trees. Just another look at the home, looking northeast. Staff recommends that the board approve the request to receive a residential use designator for extraneous farmstead, as it has been determined that it meets the minimum requirements of the Riley County zoning regulations. Staff also recommends that the planning board approve the concurrent plat of Vindeska Edition, as it has been determined that all requirements of the Riley County subdivision regulations, Riley County zoning regulations, and sanitary code have been met. If the board approves the request this evening, the last portion of the request will be heard by the Riley County Board of Commissioners on October 28th at 10:05 a.m. here in the County Commission chambers. That's all I have. Have any questions for me?
Thank you, Bob. Does any of the board members have any questions for Bob at this time?
I have none.
Thank you, John. Nobody has any, I would move that we open public comments, since this is a yeah. Is there anyone in the audience has any comments about, for, or opposed, or against the application? I don't see anyone here representing the applicant, so looks like it's kind of a straightforward
It does.
extraneous farmstead that we've had in the past, but seeing no comment, I'd entertain a motion that we close the public hearing.
Mr. Sherman, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, passes 5-0. Come back to the board for comments or motions.
This looks, fairly straightforward, meets all the
Yeah.
regulations, don't have any issues with it.
It's the kind of thing we want to happen to keep the farm ground being
That's true.
broken up. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve petition 210069 for residential use designator extraneous farmstead for the unplatted tract of land and to plat the tract into a single lot.
Thank you, Diane.
I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded that we approve the applicant as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, passes 5-0.
As well, or just both at the same
And
time?
Include
I said,
both.
I said,
Okay.
plat into a single lot.
Yeah, just, I wanted to just reemphasize that the Board of County Commissioner will hear the plat portion on October 28th at 10:05 a.m. in the County Commission chambers. So one more reminder, we also have a plat out here on the table for you to sign if you need it.
Thank you, Bob. We'll move on down our agenda. The second item on the general agenda, the Raleigh County Planning Board this evening, is a public hearing to repeal the Raleigh County subdivision regulations and Raleigh County zoning regulations, including the floodplain regulations in their entirety, and replace the said document with a single consolidated document entitled Raleigh County Land Development Regulations and adopting the driveway standards in the unincorporated areas of Raleigh County. Anna, thank you.
Good evening, all. Amanda Sneller, Planning Director. So, of course, according to your agenda, that is what we are here for tonight. Our land development regulations have a public hearing before you folks. And again, you did already mention, but it's just really important. We just really want to point out that we're also adopting the driveway standards by reference. So it's kind of both those documents that we're dealing with tonight, or at least recommending approval, I should say. Let's see, so we kind of went over last time during our work session, kind of what we accomplished through the update of our land development regulations, and Bob has prepared a staff report just to kind of summarize those changes again. Again, most of what we were after with this update is clarifications, removing inconsistencies, making things more user-friendly, again, both for us who are administering the document to the public who is trying to interpret the regulations as well. We did consolidate some of our zoning districts as we talked about. We have, for example, we have 5 single families down to, let's see, 3, 4 commercial down to 2, 4 industrial down to 2, et cetera. We created consolidated use tables where everything is there in one look. Let's see, enhance our subdivision regulations, same thing as in the entire document, just removing those inconsistencies, clarifications, corrections, things like that. Again, same with our floodplain regulations that we did overhaul with those as well. And our floodplain regulations have already been approved or reviewed and approved by the state, so those are good to go from their point of view. Let's see, and again, some new appendices that we included as well, and just made the document a little bit more attractive, if you will. We included a lot of illustrations, graphics, photos, things like that, to help make it a little bit more visually friendly to folks. So again, that is in a tiny little nutshell kind of what we've done through this update. And again, we have the driveway standards are new. It's a new document that will be separate from the LDRs, the land development regulation document that will be adopted by reference as part of this. So let's see. So again, so tonight we have our public hearing with you folks. To then hopefully have your recommendation to our Board of County Commissioners on what direction you would like to go with our LDR and the driveway standards. So, any questions?
Any questions for our director, Amanda? I wasn't able to be here last month when you went to the work session, but I saw there were several suggestions. Have those been So suggestion to put into the document that we're going to send to the Board of County Commissioners.
Yes, thank you for asking about that. The suggestion regarding the increasing from the 10-foot side yard setback to 15, I believe at SF1, correct? We have made that change. It's not necessarily reflected. We grappled with if we should provide you folks tonight another 400-page copy, with whatever. We decided not to, so hopefully we made the right decision with that. But yes, all that will be incorporated into the updated document that we're working on since we've had our work sessions with you folks and with the Manhattan Urban Area Planning Board. That will be put into their version when they see it again for adoption.
Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on that. If you notice in the note, under the SF1, I forget what section it's, I think it's 4, but it talks about the zoning district, the setbacks. That's the standard setback, is the going from 10 to 15 for a side yard setback. But there's a little note in there, there's a little caveat that you go above a certain height, then you have to be, by a foot, you have to be set back a foot. So you have to keep moving that building back the taller it gets. So that kind of gives it even more setback than what you have in the existing roofs.
So then that is in relation to what she was bringing up about the feet, where was it here?
Well, no, not that.
Not that,
That's a different thing. I think that's more like,
the Article 5, Section 2.
That was for an extraction site, so if he had like
Okay,
excavating some
Okay,
sort of
yeah,
material like
okay.
rock or something like that.
2 different things that they're talking about. Okay,
I'm talking about like your standard setbacks for that particular zoning district.
okay,
Okay,
Like-
there's a little note on the bottom that says, after a certain height, it has to be scooped back. You go a foot up, you have to go a foot back.
okay.
And so that kind of configuration is not in the existing regs. It's just
I
10
like
feet
that.
or less. So
I like
it
that.
moves it back. So it helps with the scale, I think, of what you're talking about, where it feels like it's, it's the building's right up on someone else's
Right.
property. So it helps with that.
Good.
Are there any other of her questions covered in this section that we?
These were just brought up this evening.
Yeah, no, but I mean, does any of this need to be considered before we, or is this all covered in different?
Bob, could I interrupt you? It'd be helpful. I appreciate the comments that you were brought up this evening. And I know you made the remark that you may not have been able to find them in there. Bob, could you go through those and answer if some of these things were taken care of elsewhere in the document?
There was one, and I'm trying to think of what it was. I think it was the height. The building height in the corridor overlay district, the reason why there's not a height limitation there is because the height is governed by the underlying zoning district.
Is that in relation here to
Yeah, whatever
the
that is, whatever the zoning is.
It was the
gateway?
third one.
Yeah.
The Gateway corridor, along with the Eureka Valley K-18 corridor, have certain standards. It's an overlay. So whatever the zoning is underneath it, that's where the requirements for height and a bunch of other things are. The overlay adds certain extra restrictions. And the height was not one of them. It's governed by the underlying zoning, whatever that is. Most likely, it's going to be 35 feet. Generally. That's it.
What about like some of the plant heights? Is that
No, I think that those aren't, and some other, I think when she mentioned that there needs to be some consistency, I agree with that, and know that hasn't been, addressed. There's quite a few things that she was talking about that are not addressed, and it's good for the pipe, which goes out.
So does this need to be then like tabled tonight and redone?
Not necessarily. I think what can be done is we go through these and find what, if you want to, if you want to make a decision on them, agree to them, or, or consider them, and or forward a recommendation to the county commission on the document, with conditions these are addressed.
I think on the back of our, back of our deal in number, for possible motion, for number B, it said that we can forward them by reference with the following changes, and then make some suggestions that were brought up tonight and include those. Is that correct?
And we can do that.
I just hated to approve this and then decide.
No,
to
yeah,
change it.
no, I agree with you,
Next
Nick.
meeting.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It would be helpful for the planning board to go over those things that she discussed and get some consensus on things.
John, you're hearing all this?
He doesn't have a copy of it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he hadn't seen that. Yeah, I guess you don't, yeah.
I've got another copy if somebody wants to send it to them.
Oh,
I have other copies.
yeah. Is that something possible or?
Can you hear us,
Email
John?
it to me. Email it to me.
But not tonight. I mean, we can't right now.
No. Email it to me tomorrow, Lisa.
I mean, I could email it to somebody who tells me who to email it to.
Well, I think were you guys wanting him to see it like right now?
Well, so we could join in the discussion. I think it's a.
Well, that's what, we'll approve this tonight and then with a caveat that this is looked through and maybe changed or added to. We have to make a motion next month to add these things to it. If
No.
this.
No, what you can do though, again, I would like though, if just, the board's gonna have to make a decision on these individual suggestions, not just go carte blanche.
No,
Well,
I-
no,
Right.
yeah, I was thinking you'd have time to review this and see where it fit in, where you need to make changes. I mean,
I just don't think it's right.
Do.
I don't think it's right to talk about all these things when John doesn't.
well, he doesn't have any access to it.
No, but I meant,
Yeah.
Well, what we can do is go through the document that she submitted and just verbally, he can hear us.
Yeah.
We can discuss it point by point. I mean, I understand consistency between calipers of, that's a good recommendation. And if there's anything else that the board would like to consider, we can definitely go through that. I think that now's the time to do that.
is it okay with the board then? We'll just go down these item by item.
Fine.
John, I guess we'll just have to read this and hope that makes good sense to you. Are you-
All righty.
Is that okay? First suggestion was this evening in Article 4, Section 13, paragraph C, 3D, relatively to the manufactured home park district states, a drainage study prepared by an engineer licensed in the state of Kansas. The suggestion has been made to add a landscape architect licensed in the state of Kansas with regard to surface drainage language for that paragraph. In other words, I take it that we're just going to add, or your suggestion is to add landscape architect in addition to the
Right.
engineer.
And that's why I included what the state board of technical professions says, a landscape architect is allowed to do, and it discusses grading and drainage plans.
Are you saying adding the landscape architect in addition to the engineer?
Yes,
Okay,
like
that's
it
what I
can
wanted
be
to.
and or.
And or, that's what I was wondering, and or.
I'm thinking.
John, and did you kind of understand what that suggestion has been made?
Yes, I do. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
We want to go and, or just or.
What?
Is there,
Or, I guess it would be or,
Yeah.
yeah, it would be or, you're right.
Okay.
you recommend an engineer?
By an engineer licensed in it, by an engineer or landscape architect licensed in the state of Kansas.
Yeah, but I was wondering whether he thought we ought to be an engineer, or do you think being an architect is good enough?
Well, if, again, there are standards that allow a license, we're talking a licensed landscape architect, is that was?
Right, and the
Suggestion.
state board of technical professions says that one of the common technical services is grading and drainage plans. And how I was reading that document is that it's talking about the shape of the surface of the land for drainage purposes. So for example, like, common technical services for landscape architects is consultation, planning, designing, or responsible supervision in connection with the development of land areas for preservation and enhancement, the development of sustainable designs and technology, preparation, review, and analysis of master plans for land use and development, production of overall site development and land enhancement plans, grading and drainage plans, irrigation plans, planting plans, construction details, specifications, cost analysis, and reports for land development. And the designing of land forms and non-habitable structures for aesthetic and functional purposes. So landscape architects are allowed to do grading and drainage plans by the state of Kansas by that license,
License.
a licensed landscape architect.
Does the board have any problem with including a landscape architect?
I don't, as long as the architect will cover what the engineer would do.
At the same time, at the very, you look at the last sentence, the drainage plan shall be subject to approval by the county engineer, so it's one or the other, and if the county engineer is unhappy with it, then so either which way.
So it's got a check, in
It's
other
gonna be-
words.
There's a checks and balances there, so I don't have any problem.
Okay.
We make motion on this?
Consensus,
We
yeah.
just need-
I think it'd be a consensus of the board that we'd like to see that section 4, Article 4, Section 13 to include a licensed landscape architect in addition to an engineer. Is that the consensus?
And
And
just
or,
or and or,
Just or.
I think
just or.
I think
Just
it's four.
And would make it so that the
Both of
engineer and the landscape architect would have to do it.
Just
Right.
Yeah,
It's doubling the work.
just-
yeah.
Okay, or.
Or.
Okay, everybody content with that?
Yep.
Moving
Yes.
on, moving
Yes.
down to the second one, it's regard to some shrubs are not available in 5-gallon sizes, especially for some of the shorter shrubs. Suggestion has been made to suggest a 2-gallon size instead of 5-gallon. As in some of these smaller plants, it's 30 inches high, don't come in that size container. Anyone see a problem with making that change? I mean, it makes
No.
kind of common sense to me.
A reason to have, if I can make a comment.
Yeah.
A reason to have a larger size is, well, one reason would be for vandalism, once again, to have a more mature plant. That just, some plants just aren't available in that size. To say like if there were to be an ornamental grass, just may not be able to find it in the tray in a 5-gallon. So that would eliminate that choice in the plant palette. Some of them just like if you buy a peony, not that you would be planting peonies, but they don't come very big, and it might even be hard to get a number 2 container in a peony. But having the number 2 container as a minimum size for like some of these larger facilities, I think that would be a reasonable compromise.
Just dawned on me, I recall anything specific about that, but is there any kind of expectation that everything lives? I meant by that, if we say,
That was in there,
Is it?
they had to be replanted by May
Okay.
1st, I think, if something died.
that's what I was wondering, I meant a 5-gallon would be a bigger, more mature thing with a higher likelihood of, I would think, of doing well.
It
Yeah.
might, some plants actually do better if you plant them smaller.
Yeah, I can see that,
than
yeah.
bigger.
Yeah. But as long as there's something in there that they can't just go out and plant it and they all don't live and
Yeah.
then they go on to the next stage.
Does dead foliage account as screening.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
It can, like the ornamental grasses or any shrub.
uh, does any of the board members see a problem with changing that and just putting the 2 gallon or number 2 container probably is better? Is that the-
Makes more sense.
That's fine.
John, are you comfortable with that?
Yes,
Okay, can I say that consensus of the board is going to be to change or make the suggestion for the 2 gallon or, 2 gallon container?
Yes.
Okay, will do. Next suggestion that was made this evening is the Gateway Corridor Overlay District is not defined how many building stories are allowed. And I know Bob made that remark that it's really in there on the size of the building and the setback. Is that right?
It's my understanding.
Yeah.
It's in the underlying zoning district. That's where the height standards are.
Okay.
That's right.
And that could have been later in the document, and like I say, I got to page maybe 250,
Well,
260. I didn't get to all 400 pages.
That's okay. Would you be comfortable with leaving it if that meets the,
Yeah,
Bob
it's just
says.
if there was maybe a reference to where it does talk about, like, the height of buildings, that would be nice, just instead of having to hunt, like, what page do I find it? Like, how can I make this 3-story building, 2-story building?
would it be possible, Bob, to make a note of reference in that item?
I think I'm not sure of this, but intent, use limitations. Yes, I was hoping if we had that. In there.
G1B, I think it's probably farther down, or maybe not.
Okay, here it's not. Use limitations, the use limitations set forth in the underlying zoning district. But, yeah, I don't see anything dealing with any of the requirements.
Looks like I only have that language in there.
Could you do like a reference
got-
to where to find,
I got-
like,
I'm getting my eyes
overlays?
fixed.
Like references of where to find the overlay maps, that would be really helpful to know, like, where are they to find them?
Yes.
Okay.
On number 2,
So,
B, it says use limitations, the Rubella Gate shall follow the use limitations set forth in the underlying zoning district. Residential uses are forbidden.
So I take it that maybe the suggestion was to put something in there where the underlying zoning districts, that information can be found.
And the reference to the appendix, it's in the appendix,
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
maybe a link, hyperlink.
Everybody content with that as a consensus?
Links are good.
Yeah, okay. Next suggestion this evening was Article 4, Section D1D. Consider adding language about bicycle travel with regard to shared use roadways, bike lanes, and or shared pedestrian bicycle paths.
The only thing here is that, I'm not sure if there's anything in, standard Raleigh County standard road design, for platted areas, if there's anything outside of that. Because we are talking about rural roads, we're not talking city.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and there are no bicycle lanes on the rural roads.
Yeah, and you get, and that's on purpose.
Yeah.
I said,
When I read this, I like riding bicycles, but nothing irritates me more on the county road and somebody's out there yo-yoing around on a bicycle
yeah,
and you don't see them and I
When I
don't.
was a kid, I did the road.
Well, FDOT doesn't allow, it's a bike route, sorry, I'm not remembering the technical term for it, but they do allow a route for bikes on rural roads. I actually worked on the design for signage for one in 3 counties in southeast Kansas.
Okay.
It's a 102-mile route, and I apologize, I don't remember the terminology at this point, but there is a technical term for bike routes that are on rural roads that would allow bicycles to use them.
We don't have any bike routes, though, in Riley County that are designated on any rural roads.
And I think when I use the term route, that's not the right term. So I apologize, I don't remember the term right off the top of my head here. But it.
Like a bike lane.
We don't have bike
and it's-
lanes
and it's
either,
not a
no.
lane, you keep the road like it is, but you, a place can consider allowing bikes to be there instead of saying they can't. be there.
Can't a bike go down the road either.
Yeah, a bicycle can go down any Kansas road except the turn, or
The
the
interstate.
interstate, as far as I know.
Yeah. You can.
So I don't think it is.
And that,
And it costs the county too much to put signage up all over the county for bicyclists too, so that's be kind of prohibitive.
I kind of want to say that what she's suggesting is beyond the purview of what these are. That's a whole different thing when we get together and decide how to implement bike routes and things like that. And if they want to go that route.
I mean, there's a lot of people that ride bicycles down on McDowell Creek Road or out towards Zedale on Highway 18. But there are no official routes out there. There are no lanes, nothing. I mean,
yeah.
it's,
and I-
you know, they're
I-
supposed to just observe the general traffic law of that single file going what direction and all that kind of stuff.
Right, and I was, actually, when I was looking at this, I was thinking more in the sense of more urbanized areas, to say like some of these, like the Eureka Valley, where there's quite a few buildings there. Might there be some creative ways to allow, like maybe it's a shared path. I noticed there on the language, there's wording about having sidewalks. And that made it sound like, okay, bicycles can use them too. But then maybe you'd want to have a 10-foot wide shared use path for bikes and pedestrians. And maybe it's not on the roadway, but if there could be more study into some of the recommendations for allowing bicycle use. That's what I'm looking at, not, I didn't, recommend certain language to put in the document, but just to even consider how could the spaces like, I'm thinking of the space like just east of the airport. There's like an industrial area in there. Well, maybe, and I don't know if sidewalks are required there or not, they may not be. But maybe there can be consideration of bike lanes or sidewalks that are wide enough for bicycles too. So say, for example, if you know where the American Institute of Baking is, up on the hill, well, there's an ICT grant that K-State received to put in a shared use bike lane. And I think I'm using the right term. There again, I don't have the descriptions in front of me. But instead of having like a 6-foot wide sidewalk, the sidewalk is 10 feet wide to allow for bicycles and pedestrians. And it's separate from the road, which the road there is a road and not a street. It doesn't have any curves, at least it didn't when that design was worked on. But there's the landscape buffer just with grass, and then there's that shared use path. So having, allowing a path for bicycles and sidewalks, that's what I'm trying to bring forth is, could something be added in the rules that would allow bicycles to be there instead of not? So that's what I'm saying, but I'm not proposing any particular type of
Is there any
language.
language prohibiting bicycles?
No.
So I don't think it's.
But aren't bicyclists allowed any place on the public roads? I mean, they're always allowed,
The interstate.
so.
One, and we're talking about through the zoning and subdivision is what is going to be put into place as new development. As far as, you know, putting some sort of program in or change the road itself as they are now, that's beyond what this document does.
It's beyond our
That's what I'm saying.
authority.
I mean,
I think we move on.
it works for like any new development, but it's not a coordinated effort. You'd only have for like that one lot, other than the entire road.
Well, it's a very good idea and everything, that I don't think we're the group that, we don't initiate those kind of things
Well, it's
to happen
outside-
and
it's
stuff
outside of the scope of this.
of what we do, yeah.
I think we let that one go.
I think it's the consensus of the boards that we're going to, we're not going to do anything. Yeah.
Even like for subdivisions, does the regulations cover subdivisions
Yes.
at all? So that could be a consideration in the subdivision design, like the roadway design for it, if bike lanes should be considered, or a sidewalk is wide enough for bikes and pedestrians. You say like there's Eagles Landing, that might be in Potawatomi County, but anyway, it's east of the river where there aren't sidewalks there for kids to walk on or bicycle, they have to be in the road, which isn't very safe for little kids riding their bike. So having that allowance in the subdivision could add to safety for little kids riding their bikes.
I think it's a good suggestion, but I think at this stage in what we're trying to move forward, I think it's going to take a lot more public input and some thought on how to do that. I don't think it,
We're not
We're not-
prohibiting it, it's not, if the developer wants to allow it, build it,
you know,
they're free to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I wasn't trying to get
Yeah.
specific languages, kind of just put the idea out there.
well, it's a good idea. Like I said, just doesn't kind of fit what we got to do, I don't think. Another suggestion of John, and since you don't have the thing, is Article 5, Section 2, about the extraction operation shall not be permitted within 300 foot of a residence or 200 feet of a residential district. And then regarding the 10 and 15, the suggestion was made making everything just 300 feet. Anyone got any?
Well, the 10 and 15 setbacks is, I think, for other,
Residential development.
yeah, it's for residents and that kind of stuff. It's not in regard to the,
No. She's
The
talking about,
extraction.
like a quarry, establishing a quarry.
right.
a certain
So that is
distance.
one thing that the 200 applies to, and then the 10 and 15 applies to other things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The house itself.
right.
Where's this at?
So my question is, then, if there's a 10-foot setback from the edge of a house, is that setback, could that also be the edge of a residential district? If it is, then that quarry, for example, operation would only be 200 feet away from the edge of the residential district and only be 210 feet away from the house.
Okay. I see what you said. Yeah, if the house is right on the edge of the residential district.
Yes.
It would be 200. Part that says 300. Got to be consistent. I mean, maybe if you want it to be 300 feet away from the house,
No.
and it's got to be 300 feet away from the residential district if that house is set right on the border. I think is what you said. Yeah.
That's what, and maybe it describes somewhere else what the definition of a residential district is, and I just didn't catch it. But just reading that paragraph is like,
What it really, I think the concern here is if there is a vacant lot, where a house could be built. And you got a 200-foot just to that edge of that residential district. And they could build that house right next to that property line.
Mhm.
And it's this 10,
The 10
10
to
feet
15.
and not the 300. And now, this is the establishment of a quarry, not the establishment of a house by a quarry.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
Okay.
opposite, you know, but to looking out for the general public, for not understanding that need to be set back from a quarry. And the operation, I don't mind making that consistent. I don't see why not.
I was gonna say, number one, we would never let there be a house built that close to a quarry
But, well.
or a quarry that close to a house.
So if we, if it's 200 feet from a residential district, and they want to get a conditional use, for example, by meeting this, they could do that.
I like, to just put it 300, just.
Be done with it.
Yeah.
Just make it's easier.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
John, do you understand, we're considering just making it 300?
Yes, I understand completely. Yes. Sounds good to me.
Okay, consensus of the board is that we make it uniform and make it 300 feet. Next suggestion here we had about the Article 6, Section 6 in regard to visibility and these triangles. I didn't quite follow all of that, but it made
Yeah, there's
sense.
kind of a couple points in there, I apologize. One was just trying to find the Riley County standards for roadway design and platted subdivisions. Having a reference to that, I was searching and searching online to try to find it, and I found something similar, but the online tag wasn't saying those exact words, so I thought, is this what they need or not? So that again is just like references to what document is being talked about. But then the second item is about site distances. And that's Article 6, Section 6. It showed a picture, but it didn't say what the distances were. So that's where I'm suggesting to add this ASHTO information. And that's is on that
Second page.
second page. And then that is what I found on this Federal Highway Administration link. And that's where it talks about having enough visibility so a person can see a car coming and have time to stop. And there's people who run stoplights and they don't necessarily stop at a stoplight or a stop sign, so it's just a safety feature.
Well, I agree with your suggestion when you was talking about south of Douglas County on there. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I can't ever see when I get out there. You inch out far enough, you're afraid somebody's gonna take off in front of your vehicle.
Yeah,
You
so
know,
I stopped for the light, but then even, I mean, I was taught when I learned to drive, you still look both ways.
Yeah.
Even though it's a stoplight, is somebody coming? Well, I hope nobody's coming.
Bob, would it be possible to put some kind of a reference in here to?
There's your reference right there.
There.
And I'm not sure if we're planning on linking those or not. But that should be on the website.
And does it, what I found, it didn't talk about these ASHTO standards at all, or the site triangles. What I was finding, there was other verbiage, but it wasn't necessarily called, it was like subdivision design, there were standards for street design, but not roadway. I mean, I was taught that a road is different than a street has curves and a road doesn't. But
I
I
think it's
think it would apply to both streets and roads.
I think that they're calling them road streets. That's a great, the verbiage would be interchangeable here for the county.
Yeah, I just don't know if what's referenced actually includes these site distance triangles. I'm just remembering from years past when I looked at the city of Manhattan site triangle and they only had a 15-foot distance. 15 feet is almost like nothing. When you consider this chart and it says like the design intersection site distance for 25 miles per hour is 280 feet. That's so if I'm sitting in my car and I'm looking this way, the measurement is taken from straight ahead, then along the center line of the street, 288 feet, and then making that point where I am, that's the triangle that's created between me, the center line of the street, and that distance down. That's where it needs to be a clear view
Right.
above where I can see from a short little car.
One thing I want to make, try to make it clear here. This reference to anything that's dealing with the roads or was taken out of the existing subdivision regulations and put in this document here. That's a public works document that we cannot simply just change because we're adopting this. We can make a recommendation with this to have a different document changed. We can check with them and see what they're talking about. At the same time, any subdivision that comes in and it gets reviewed by the county engineer
That's
as
what I
well.
was talking, yeah.
So if there's roads, there's road plans that are submitted with that plat, and they have to meet those ASHTO standards. So that's part of it. We can take a closer look at this to make sure that if the language in here is clear on keeping the site triangle clear. Not sure, I thought we did that, but.
I just couldn't find it. I mean, I did a search for those words exactly. I found similar, what seemed to be similar, documents, but they didn't talk about site triangles from what I could find.
Well, I'm talking about in this document.
And that talks about side triangle.
Oh, it's in here?
Yeah,
Well, it's that, but it doesn't say,
Obstructions.
Well, it
it
says
doesn't
up
say
there,
what the
it's just,
distances are.
We don't wanna, in this document, we do not wanna specify what that distance is. Because then you'd have an entire chart. That is up to Public Works to define the speed, the distance, and whatever that site triangle is supposed to be.
yeah, see, it says
Yeah.
right there, it says specified by the Raleigh,
Yeah, and that,
specified by Raleigh County Standards.
That's
of Roads.
what-
That's
that's
where they
what
need a
that is.
reference.
Yeah, and I'd like to know where that is. 'Cause I
She couldn't
it.
find the document.
Oh,
I can't,
Well,
I
that's
couldn't
probably just
find it.
outside of this.
I couldn't find it to give you,
it's on the
like,
website somewhere.
to be able to say it does say this or it doesn't. I don't know what it says.
Could there be a link there?
Again, this document, even within this document, it's not gonna have all the ASHTO standards, because when road plans are submitted for any roads that are part of subdivision, that's when the comparison is made, that's when they have to go through all those very specific technical aspects of the construction of the road, how it's laid out, the site triangle, the speed of the road, the curvature, all that stuff is built in.
I think the question in it is, where do you find the Public Works?
That document right there, it should be on the website.
Okay.
I haven't, I have one on.
But I think
my
that's the
desktop,
question,
but I
is
haven't
where you
yet.
find that.
Well, I was gonna say, when that wording is there, the Riley County standards, can that be highlighted as a link to
Possibly,
those?
Possibly,
Would that be a possibility?
possible, I'll check.
And then I think that would take care of the whole thing there.
Yeah.
Now, that, like I said, that document's not gonna include all the information she's asking for, ASHTO standards and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
This right here, though, is supposed to be general. It's supposed to let the people
Right.
bring awareness to the people developing the subdivision, that this is, this cannot happen, obstructing, whether that be trees, machinery, or what was the light box there?
Yeah, the traffic signal box.
Yeah, those kind of thing, and right, and your field of vision, and we do have that, any of these, streets going out onto Fort Riley Boulevard. Out by Radio Shack, where Radio Shack used to be, I think it's Juliet, you cannot see.
I know, you cannot see there.
It's
It's terrible.
so they're breaking their own rules, but, so that's kind of what we're gonna set it up for that. And as far as other things like that, the Public Works will give us some guidance as to where it needs to be, how large it needs to be in the review.
I think there where it talks about the county engineer's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the county engineer will decide what is and what isn't anyway. I mean, we don't decide that, so.
Right, exactly.
John, you okay leaving it there with, up to county engineer?
Yes,
We take an ice cream break. We take an ice cream break.
I couldn't get my mute button unclicked.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you. Sorry, then the board, we're gonna use that as our consensus. We're gonna move to Article 6, Section 7 regarding
Parking.
the impervious surfaces, downstream flooding, excess parking type thing. I don't know if that really applies really much to the county.
This is more related to something for future study. Is is that much parking required?
That'd be more for service improvement in the city.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the most. So we're gonna have, like over across the viaduct here, there's a chance when that develops out. Most likely it will be annexed in anyway, but it could stay outside the city for a certain time. That's what the parking requirements truly will need to go into effect. Out on K-18 corridor and in that area that out by the airport. We actually have, there was, we reviewed all kinds of parking standards, including our own. And we drew back from that because we felt that it was, again, excess, way too much. And I'm not sure this one got, pulled back. The other thing we did was we reviewed other areas, other municipalities and their standards and see how they compare to one another and to what we were requiring. And we felt that we had a rational step on maybe this particular one. I don't know, maybe they all need to be drawn back some. There's also, so there's also the variance criteria that anything measurable gets a variance. It's not gonna be a list of things like you have now where this can get a variance, this can get a variance, that can get a variance, but anything can get a variance practically. And so including height, the number of things that are required, you can pull back. So if the requirement is calculated out to be 50 and really 30 would do it, you can get a variation of some sort. But we can take a closer look at that and see if the parking standards, I suppose. See if we can go over those a bit more closely and see if we missed something.
How about if we do that, just have them look over that again and see if maybe by chance this one didn't get changed or something in particular.
And this is
But-
for daycare.
It was a daycare, 250 children, 32
Yeah,
staff.
this is
I just
childcare.
looked at one, I didn't have time to compare them all.
It's not the daycare, it's the childcare.
Oh, childcare.
It's the difference.
What page is that on?
613.
Is it likely to have a 250 child and 32 staff childcare center that's gonna be parking?
So say like, for example, the Center for Child Development at K-State, that's a 250 child facility. I don't know how many staff, but there's a 34 car lot to the west, and the one next to it is probably about 20. So that'd be 54, and that 34 car lot, it isn't full all the time. So that's the example that comes off the top of my head.
Also, this, if you read it right, is one parking space for each 3 occupants. So if you had 30 occupants, that's 10 spaces.
Yeah, she's looking at the 250 childcare and 32 staff, which is 282. My question is, does that mean, how big of a center is it? It'll meet the fire code.
That I didn't double check. the
Yeah,
fire
I
code.
don't have any idea.
So I didn't check that, so that's why I was just suggesting to look at it, and even with the concept of looking at the minimal numbers instead of like the idea of having a maximum, like the example was 50, then going down to 30. What if it was looked at the other way, 30, and then the variance could be for more? If somebody wanted to have more parking and they could justify why they needed more, but that minimum could be there just as a cost savings for one, and also flood control. But in this instance, if they're counting the 3 occupants, or 1 to 3 occupants as the number of children,
No,
that's what kind of made me pause. Well, the children aren't gonna need a car themselves to drive, they're gonna be with a parent to go home. But the parents are just gonna come and go. So anyhow, it ultimately is just the idea of reducing the amount of impervious surface. I was really thankful that there was the pervious surfaces were allowed in the regulations, so that's really good news. But the impervious surfaces, that's one of my concerns is just because it contributes to downstream flooding. Because water goes faster over concrete or asphalt than if it's over grass.
Would the board consider just having Bob and Amanda review this section and
I think that'd
see
be
if it kind of
best.
fits what we're talking about?
Yes.
someone explain to me again where the 32 and all that's coming from?
It's just something that I was
She's
just
picked up.
quickly looking at the childcare center
Yeah.
line item for 1 for each 3 occupants. So if, for example, you had the Center for Child Development at K-State, I know this, I mean, that's K-State property, it's all different. But if the occupants in the building includes the students and the staff, let's just guess, it's 250 students and 32 staff. I don't know if that's how many actually occupy the space. But then when I took the 1 to 3 ratio, that meant that a person would need to design a parking lot for 94 cars.
For 200 and something people?
Right, but most of those people are children.
Right, I
So,
think that where that comes from is like a typical, I don't know, 3-car or 3-person in a car, 3 kids in a car, kind of thing, average. That's all that is, an average. That's why. Yeah, that's why you got 1 instead of a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, and I wonder if the other confusing part is using the word occupants. Because I feel like what I'm hearing from you is, it's not clear, are the children considered the occupants or just the workers or who?
Everyone.
Because obviously that makes a big difference, because you're right, I mean, children don't need cars, so.
That's why there's an average there. They might not, the staff will, and most staff will drive themselves. Very little need anywhere around here for, commuters or what's it,
Carpool.
carpool, thank you. So that's the average. So if you take your 32 staff, there's 32 right there. And then go from that 1 to 3 for the children, see what gets you.
and that was just a quick guess, it's 32. I didn't do the calculations of KDHE to know how many teachers would need to be there for the number of students and the type of classroom. So that was just a quick number when I was trying to review this before coming to the meeting.
So we can definitely review this.
Yeah, let's
for
just-
your request.
Let's do
Yeah, I
board,
think that,
the consensus of the board would be that you look at it and review it. John, you're on board?
Yes.
Okay. Next suggestion made this evening was Article 6, Section 8 regarding larger, more mature trees had less chance of vandalism than the smaller ones. Suggestion was maybe to consider that larger caliper of trees. Anybody have some thoughts about that?
Yeah, article, there's 422, did list the 2.5, but then, but then 6A says 1.5. So just consistency there. But I'd suggest the larger size. There are some plants that you just can't get a 2.5-inch caliper. But maybe again, that could be when it goes through review, a person could say, well, we can only get this in 1.5 inch and it's a certain height.
Isn't that left up to the landscape people?
I just gotta make a recommendation.
Uh,
Would make a are.
It depends on the type of plant that
That's
it
what's-
is. To say like if a Japanese red maple is an ornamental, you may not be able to find it in a 2.5-inch caliber. But you could find maybe 6 to 10 feet tall. But you might want to have this special ornamental tree for maybe somebody's memorial. They're asking, I want to have a memorial for my loved one. It's a Japanese red maple. Well, all you can find is 1.5 inches. But I would suggest just in general, to say the 2.5-inch caliber. Wanted to go with a smaller size, to say, or approved by the county. I don't think yellow landscape architect, I suggest that, but.
If somebody puts in a smaller one and it dies, they gotta replace it.
Yes.
Well, I would just leave it there, and if people wanna go smaller, they gotta replace it, they gotta replace it.
So you're right, so the first one you noted was on 422.
Right, 422 said to use 2.5 inch,
This is page,
but later in the document, it says to use 1.5 inch.
trying to find out where those are.
So 422 says 2.5 inch.
Okay.
And then 6.8 says 1.5 inch.
Okay.
So basically consistency is
Yeah.
what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely recommend for a shade tree, 2.5 inch, some of the ornamentals, it could be 1.5 inch, but all that 422 lists 2.5 inches for shade and ornamental.
One way you can do it is if you make the minimum being 1.5.
Yeah, that's what I say. Yeah.
And everything above that is will work.
Make it minimum 1.5, and if they want that certain kind that only comes in one, why?
If they
That's
put
what
in
they
a
get.
1.5 and it dies, they gotta replace it, that's up to them to do.
Joe, you have any?
They can make the educated.
I just make a consensus that it's gotta be 1.5.
Yeah,
Leave it up to people.
as long as it does.
I
get
recommend
replaced.
they go
Yeah.
bigger, but I would make it a bar.
Yeah.
The 1.5 can be pretty small, so when it comes to like somebody getting out of the car and opening their car door in an island, and it could just break off, or somebody's just fooling around and they break it off, so that'd be a reason to have the 2.5 inch size to keep it in there. I
But if
didn't
they're
mean to bring it up to get a
responsible
smaller
for
size,
replacing it,
but
that's something for them to replace it for. That'd be to their advantage to put a 2.5.
That's what I was gonna say.
But it's.
For-
up to them.
for
they
consistency, I
won't-
just-
they won't, it's more money,
Yeah,
go with the 2.5.
but well, I mean, if
They
they
gotta
have to
replace it.
replace so many, I'm just gonna get more money.
It really depends on the location, circumstances, and everything, where it's wise to go smaller, wiser to go larger, that kind of thing. We're gonna, if we set the bar here at the minimum requirement, you can't go no smaller than this. It takes everything else into account.
Yeah.
So how many circumstances are we in the county going to have that we are doing this,
In the
landscaping in a parking lot?
in the corridor overlay districts. There's hopefully, they are going to be redeveloped in a particular manner that is acceptable than what you see now. Coming into town,
But I thought we wanted to keep that rural feeling, that rural vision.
not the corridor, that's your urban.
The urban area, people want to do that.
Well, what you see already out there on Slottle Road, K177, whatever it is, right out there on Pillsbury, as you're right, or right when you're leaving town, it's already, I'm talking about redeveloping that. So it's much nicer than what you're seeing out there now, and it's a bit more organized. And so this is what that's for. If, for example, if someone come in, and I know it's less likely now because of all the recent development in hotels and stuff like that, but there was talk, 8-9 years ago about a major hotel being parked out there, collecting all that land, putting it in one spot, city water, city sewer and all that. And there were no standards. It's outside the city limits.
So,
This is what that's for.
okay, so we have these standards. That is in the urban area. who has jurisdiction over that? Is it our standards, or are there urban area standards, or are there city standards that they have to go?
The corridor overlay district, outside the city limits, is part of the zoning regulation, part of this document.
Okay, so it's
We
county.
will still be in the Manhattan urban area, will still be subject to their subdivision regulations. Even though that they're also doing the same corridors, same overlay, but theirs are quite a bit more intense than what we're suggesting. So if they take it in, the property in, then they're gonna be subject to their standards for the corridor overlay district.
But they see our standards and approve our standards, but we do not see theirs and approve theirs.
Right. Because it only happens when they annex it. Now, here's the thing, the same thing goes with the subdivision regulations. That's one of the things that are, is going to be going, later on this month, next month. Manhattan urban area, or Man City, Manhattan is also doing their combined document. And in retrospect, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, since there is an interlocal agreement where we will use their subdivision regulations, but we will use our zoning regulations. They will use their subdivision regulations and zoning regulations inside the city. But outside the city limits, within that urban area, we just use the subdivision regulations. Now it's all combined and mixed in. So they're gonna have to extract, and we're gonna have to go through the Board of County Commission just to get that adopted when they go through and adopt their stuff. So it's really complicated. But what we have going on here, what these are for, to answer your question, is for the corridor overlay districts. Outside of that, we're most likely not gonna see that type of development. We're not encouraging through the comprehensive plan, rural development,
Right.
cornfield mall, that kind of thing. We're not doing that, so we're gonna try to focus in on where it's already kind of happening and just to make it better. That's what these are for.
Ms. Brogan, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a suggestion for the tree sizes, is to have 2.5 inch be the smaller size for shade trees and 1.5 inch for ornamental trees. That the reason would be vandalism, because I've seen less vandalism with those sizes. Or at least have a 2 inch for a shade tree and a 1.5 inch for ornamental.
No problem with that. Can you do something about the deer that come on my property?
Yeah.
Do you have a problem, Mr. Nathan, with this like that? Diane? John, did you hear the suggestion?
Yeah, yep, I did. I'm okay with it.
Okay. Consensus would be that we're gonna have a, 2 inch shade tree and 1.5 inch ornamental?
2.5 and 1.5?
Well, either 2 or 2.5 inch, either one, and a 1.5 ornamental.
Let's go to,
I just want to get it.
2 for shade tree
sure.
and 1.5 for a ornamental?
Mhm.
Board okay with that?
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you, John. We got that in there. I think there's one other suggestion here.
In that one also, it said add site distance setbacks
Yeah,
at apex of parking lot islands for mature trees. Height no taller than 30 inches.
From the parking lot surface.
Yeah, from the parking lot surface to the top of the plant within 10 foot from apex of the island.
I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's probably a pretty good suggestion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was thinking too, that you would think that people would think like that, but
Can we put that in there, Bob?
Okay.
yeah, it's, I mean, it's basically just word for word there.
You okay with that, Joe?
I'm fine with it.
John, what we were talking about was the side triangle on those islands in the parking lot, making sure we didn't plant the trees at the backside where you try to back out and you can't see.
Okay, I got it, correct. Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
30 inches,
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
Okay, super. You provided the board with a lot of good suggestions this evening. We
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
your insight and reading through all the pages of documents to find that.
Wasn't all of them.
That's what,
I
that's,
got 900 to go, but I guess this is my chance.
this is the chance, yeah, this is the chance,
This is my
Yeah.
one chance.
yeah. I kind of messed up. This is a public hearing and I guess I opened the public hearing anyhow. So I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing now.
I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. We close the public hearing this evening on the Raleigh County subdivision and zoning regulations. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Passes 5-0. I guess unless the board has some other questions or something, we need to make a motion on how to present this to the Board of County Commissioners. Say that we probably want to do something similar to.
Number 2. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move to forward a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners of Riley County to repeal the existing Riley County subdivision regulations and Riley County zoning regulations, including the floodplain regulations in their entirety, and replace those documents with a single consolidated document entitled Riley County Land Development Regulations, and also adopt. Can I go ahead and say that now? Since we haven't talked about them.
Yeah.
The driveway standards of the unincorporated area of Riley County in Kansas by reference with the following changes as just presented.
And with what you discussed at the last work session.
And what we discussed at the last work session, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
My understanding is that's already been incorporated, but that's fine.
We just want to make sure it's in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
fine.
John, you understand the motion?
Yes,
All the board members understand the motion? As he was a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded, and I won't read it all again because I think everybody understands it. So all those in favor say aye.
aye.
All opposed, so passes 5-0. And once again, I'd sure like to thank you for bringing those to our attention. I think they were good suggestions.
Thank you.
I think they were good suggestions.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. Let's see, I think that's all of our agenda items. And that you've already approved.
I know, that's why I asked about that.
I think it's got it.
Did you have any questions on it?
Not really, I don't, do you?
Okay, I entertain a motion of adjournment.
So moved.
I move we adjourn.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
So
Passes
John seconded.
Thank you, Amanda.
It just, some of those things, you know, when they have it going around.
Yeah, I understand. That's a big
Those
thing.
are, seem like
No, no.
an area.
Yep, I are. Thank you.
Well,